It's about 8:31 p.m. Today is Wednesday, April the 22nd. And welcome to week number 3 of Introduction to Corrections. Forgive me, been crying here a little bit here. I just literally just got a text from my sister, my brother-in-law, who had been in sick hospice, and I just got the message that he passed away. So I'm going to struggle through this lecture, and then I'll call my sister. So just bear with me. He was the same age as me, 70 years old. He didn't pass away from COVID-19, though. He passed away from pancreatic cancer, though. So, but anyway, so you guys keep me in your prayers as I struggle to go through this. So let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to share my screen. Oops, I got to do this right. I'm not doing this right. Okay, now, okay. All right, this is the course homepage that you're all familiar with seeing. Reminding you that this is our week 3 lecture. After this, we'll have just 2 more lectures, week 4 and week 5. And, so I will be thanking you. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate all you guys. So, like I said again, I'm gonna struggle through this and get this. Then I'll be on the phone with my sister, calling her. So as we begin week 3, reminding you that the recordings will be located down here at the bottom, and that in each of our sessions, there's always the rubrics, and you'll see them. So let's look at this announcement from week 3. This week we're going to deal with the roles of prisons and punishments and programming, and you should have read chapters 14 and chapter 4 of the text. I sent you the PowerPoints, corresponding materials to go with that as well. We're going to deal with the activities, institutional programming, changing philosophies, core rehabilitative programs, and determinate and indeterminate sentencing. And then vocabulary review very briefly. Reminding you that your discussion post, the initial posts were due last night, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. State's prison programming. That's what the initial posts were due last night, and the reply posts are due Saturday. And then finally, your written assignments due Sunday. Um, Sentencing fact sheet and the quiz. And we're going to talk about that. Some students have asked me about that, so we'll talk about that. And then, you know, my motto. Whew, I'm in one of those now. And then let's look at the course calendar. All right, so here we are at the live lecture. Your reading assignment, as I already gave it to you. And then your initial post due last night, reply post due Saturday, and then your quiz that takes place is Sunday, along with your quiz goes, and then your key phrase. Okay, and then of course reminding you again that I'm sorry, that the course ends on the 12th, May 12th is the very last day of class. So if you look at it from the perspective of Sunday, your assignments that are due, and next week, a week from today, not, oh boy, the 27th, which was Monday. Um, so if you look at it from a week from next Wednesday, then you'll see that we have just one more full week left on, that's the 6th, and then it ends that Tuesday. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go into the module itself and talk about the assignments. Okay, and then this is your uh, discussion post. So you're going to, in your initial post, you're going to deal with a short description of the types of prison programs, include goals, thoughts as to why programs are effective, why they don't work, and recommendations for additional programming, and why. And then in your reply post, respond to a student. And remember, this is checking about what's happening um, in your state, okay, in your state, whatever state you're in, and then reply to another student from another state describing the programs different from yours, why you agree or disagree with the assessment, and so forth. That's your discussion. So now let's talk about the sentencing fact sheet. Now, don't get caught into the trap of dealing with so much trying to do the brochure where you do it without doing it, running it through the word. You got to complete the brochure, but you also need to make sure that you that when you do it, that you do it in a Word document, because the student has asked me that. So it's basically dealing with determinate and indeterminate sentencing, and you can look at the options that are here that your state is going to determine whether it's determinate or indeterminate sentencing, and you've been asked to create a fact sheet letting voters know what type of sentencing, the pros and cons. And it's a one-page fact sheet, including the following that defines each type of sentencing: determinate or indeterminate. And the one student who submitted me their proof, it looked good, but just make sure that you do it through a Word document. Include specific elements of each of the type of sentence. So the elements of determinate sentencing and the elements of indeterminate sentencing. Explain at least um, two pros and two cons for each type of the sentences. So, and then provide supporting evidence from credible sources. So how am I going to know if you have supporting evidence from credible sources? You're going to have the citations included, um, and references. So make sure, because you're going to be graded this time, making sure that you have credible resources. All right. And so this is the brochure question, frequently asked questions about how to do it. All right. Make sure, by the way, you have a cover sheet, please. Some of you didn't have cover sheets in your first assignment in week 1, make sure that you have a cover sheet. And then, of course, let's take again, look at the rubric. So again, as I said before, you want to be over here in mastery. I wouldn't even start to look at this over here if it was me, because to get 20 points, you got to be in this column. To get 35 points, you got to be in this column. To get 5 points, you got to be in this column. Okay. So the key thing is to make sure that you focus on this. I would act as if this doesn't even exist. Okay, because when you get graded, um, notice what I have said before, that if you do not provide resources, look at where you end up at. You end up here, emerging. Um, and then, basic description with sentencing type from each, from credible sources. But if you don't have any real credible sources, you're going to end up here, but you might not even get all the points because you won't have the credible sources. And so you would end up losing points here. So notice what happens is right here, instantly, you're 15 points down. That's the point. And you don't want to be at that particular point. All right. So what you want to do is you want to have a description of the sensing type with thorough details on the elements of each type from credible sources based on what I just told you, what you had to do in the brochure. And then a list of the pros and cons. Remember what it said, two, at least two. I would do is more if possible, but at least two, a minimum of two with supporting evidence. And then, of course, this is the standard spelling uh, stuff. But credible sources are very, very important to getting you over from over here to over here. Because look at what here, when you get to pros and cons, missing supporting evidence, then you could definitely end up with 19 points or less here and here. Any questions about that assignment? Okay. Everybody got my rubric? And like I said again, I would ignore columns 1. I'd want to be exemplary or mastery. That's where I would want to be. So when you get the exemplary, everything is exemplary. Okay, let's close that down. So again, notice what it says. At least 2 pros and 2 cons. Not two, not a pro, not a con, but 2 of each. And supporting evidence, important. Each type of sentencing, determinate and indeterminate, include elements of each sentence. Let's see, what was that question there? A minute here. You use the brochure fact sheet. I'm not 100%. Okay, I'm not quite clear. Fact sheet, I'm not 100% sure on. Well, it's brochure form. The fact sheet is being presented in brochure form. That's okay. No, the brochure is a form of presenting the fact sheet. That's what that's, and so you know how brochures are. You have maybe a column, and a column, that kind of thing, or a column and a column with the information. Because you may have determinate and indeterminate as one column, and then um, basically that's what it means when it says brochure. Well, it says provide credible sources. So you got to be able to let me know about them being credible sources, and APA is the method that's required. Citations in the body, and then references. Uh, yeah, well, the cover page, yes, doesn't really count, but it is required. And then the one page fact sheet, and then a reference page. Okay, yeah, you can do more, but at least make sure you have that one. All right, everybody got it now? Thanks for asking those questions, because that clarifies it. All right, okay, moving along, let me close this up, and let's get back into the module. Okay, and then as far as assignments are concerned, then you have your quiz, of course. Remember how the quiz works, you know already. You have three choices, three opportunities to complete the quiz set for 30 minutes. All right. And you know how many questions because you've already had one quiz. And you know about abiding by the academic integrity policy in terms of taking your quiz. And then, of course, your live classroom lecture that I will give you that word in a bit here. Okay. So So we deal with institutional programming, changing philosophies, core rehabilitative programs, and determinate and indeterminate sentencing. Pretty much with the way that we understand about how punishment has been pretty much uh, from the point of uh, focusing more on punishment and moving towards rehabilitation. And the theory with punishment pretty much was that you pay the price for the crime that you commit. And so taking prisoners out of society, putting them away, and then as it's begun to move more towards rehabilitation as opposed to punishment. And more and more prisons today are dealing with the security of and safety of people, the offenders, as it says, and the staff. Those who work in prisons, as Bryce does, understand the philosophy that these individuals um, are humans and that yes, they're there to serve their time, but we need to do something so that they don't become recidivists or repeat offenders to come back, as we talked about in previous lectures. And so the whole issue will continue as what's the best method. One of the things that is really good about what's happening now with institutions, um, the reason why um, uh, the word prison is used, and that's a very good question as a part as the correctional facility, is because of the fact that there's still some of the old school still stuck in there. So and it's left over from the old punishment era. That's the answer to that question. Um, it says, you ask, why do we use the word prison guard when which I really don't like, instead of correctional officer? But that's the point. That is exact, and that you speak right to the point I was getting ready to make. The point I was going to make is that initially individuals who worked in these facilities all looked at it from the punishment perspective and that they were there to, um, how should I say, uh, protect themselves. And pretty much at one point, the inmates, they didn't care about what happened to the inmates, and that the inmates were bad people, and that they needed it to be treated in that fashion. And so that's what the old word prison uh, is, so forth. But most now don't refer to as prison guards. Most are called correctional um, guards, correction officers. Um, you know, so well, news crews use, because of the fact that and well, guards. Remember what the whole thing was all about. Remember I said it was to guard, and that's still what we have here. But what I'm saying here is this: is that the pendulum is changing, but it hasn't changed thoroughly. And the reason why you're saying this is because you're what we call the new breed of person working in corrections. And that is a person that works more towards the rehabilitation aspects and the humane aspects of the facilities. And so when you use the term guard, that means you're protecting something. But when you use the term correction officer, you're more like a teacher. And that's the philosophy that's happening. And that speaks to the point that if you look at some of the old videos that we had in the old class, um, the um, the guards were there because you could work in and I'll say prison because that's what it was, is that individuals didn't have to have any education beyond high school. And you had a high school diploma, and you came in and you worked your way up. But now, as you're beginning to learn, is that the pendulum is changing towards professionalism of the facility, and those individuals who work there, the nomenclature changes with the direction that the prison philosophies, and I keep saying that because that's exactly what they were, the prison philosophies. But now it's moving more towards the correction aspects of it. So the point of the matter, and then when the news people report it, uh, they still they're still learning what it's all about, because of the fact that the hiring level for many institutions, if you go back and check, it still remain for quite a few high school diploma. But that is phasing out. And one of the reasons it's phasing out is because of litigation that takes place through 1981 suits that are filed by inmates, because of the fact that the policies from the warden, and somebody was trying to tell me there was a new name that they were using for warden, and I can't remember what it was. You might know, Bryce. But the point of the matter is that the warden goes back to the old school of prison and relate to that. But uh, a lot of the uh, there's a few institutions that are changing the name from warden, and I don't remember what it is. So you guys are still using warden, as most facilities are. So does that answer your question? So you get to the point that the the pendulum's changing, but you're part of that new regime. You've been in this business a year. There are individuals who've been in it years and years and years, and you ask them what they are, they'll say prison guards. But in reality, it's like, how should I put it? Uh, Garbage men are not called garbage men anymore. They're technically called sanitary engineers. It's hard. I just don't babysit. Uh, that's my whole point. that was exactly the role. And one of the reasons why um, that took place is because those individuals who were hired in those capacities didn't have the skills, education, and knowledge that the correction officers have. Okay, it's like you're going to school so you can do your job better, so you can learn better how to help the society. And to be honest with you, as I said already, I'm a big, even with all of the stuff I've been through, I'm a big fan of rehab, of rehabilitation. And actually, the older I get, the more I'm happy about it as well. So, dealing with that. Okay. Now, let's go down and let's look at some of the things that happen here. Um, we start to deal with things like what we call um, look what it says here. It says cornerstones of EBP, dealing with the prisons themselves, evidence-based practices, as it's called, are grounded and supported in research. So now we're actually beginning to deal with working. Yep, rehabilitation does make for a safer community because you're addressing the core problem. So the research of this EPB starts to look at what happens when we deal with bringing in factors like restorative justice. Now, restorative justice is self-defining in itself, where says where it turns on uh, the harm that's caused by the behavior. So we have to address the issues that relate to it. And other countries, and it talks about um, New Zealand and Australia, and where are many examples of restorative justice. But the key thing is that you realize that the person who is being sentenced involved, and this is what I tell people. It says here it involves the victim, the offender, and the community. But you know what? Do you think that the offender is a victim too? I definitely know it is because of one of the major reasons that individuals are in prisons or in correction facilities. Um, like I said again, the point of the matter is that you find yourself working in a facility where now we want to be social workers. You're part social worker. Um, you have to be a psychologist, um, and all of those types of things. You have to be a teacher, and to those individuals who are incarcerated. But look at how restorative justice in this chart. This says it all right here. Where notice what it's called restorative justice. Yep, role model. Restorative justice. So it is better to restore something, rehab something, so that it operates better and it benefits society. But look at what restorative justice does. Now, dealing with the victim and the offender and the community, they all overlap. Like I said, the victim and the offender, they all overlap along with the community. So it all overlaps. But look where restorative justice fits right in the heart, in the middle, where you deal with community safety, you deal with the development and accountability. And so what happens is you pull these three together to work for the good of society as a whole. That's what it comes out to be. And there are many examples of restorative justice, and you'll read about them as you go through dealing with uh, your studies. So, any questions about anything that we've talked about so far? Well, the hardest part you say is that the victim doesn't want to be a part of it. That's true. Uh, but here's the point: is that the victim is doesn't exactly interact, but what the victim does is the victim begins to feel that those individuals and recognize the reasons why people commit offenses, such as me, such as me. Okay, my parents were both murdered. All right, and so yet I still was able to represent and defend offenders who committed the same kind of crime. And so but it was better off for the community in itself, and it was also better off for me once I began to understand that the offenders are also just like me, except one difference is that the victim made a poor choice, or as we say biblically, temptation is not bad, but yielding to temptation is the problem. So, but yes, yeah, the victims have trouble doing it. Um, there's a whole lot of variations. Yeah, well, we recognize again. I would say this to you quite honestly too. The more educated that people become in psychology and sociology and understanding the nature of humans, will help individuals to understand the goal of rehabilitation. Also, you will learn that when individuals are locked up long periods of time without addressing the core issues, they come out angry and bitter and will be maybe not just a repeat offender, but a person who might commit a crime that is worse off. So it's a bad thing to have anger to operate within an individual because it causes them to respond to that internal feeling of anger and strike out at some party. And most times those are innocent individuals. So, you know, but it says you agree to education to change your life. Just some people are raised not to change their ways. Uh, Yeah, but that's but the whole paradigm in itself is that we teach the younger ones not to become what the older ones are. And there are some individuals who are older who have become some of the best advocates for restorative justice, for teaching individuals don't do as I did because I learned something that I did and took those individuals who were heading in that direction and turned them around. So, so anyway, those are just some of the things. Some of the things. Yep. All right. So we're moving along here. Um, Rehabilitation programs. Um, it's a whole lot of stuff, and I'm not going to get into all the elements here in all of this, but these are the different factors that take place, the history of the person, their attitudes, values, beliefs, peer associations, personalities. One of the things that you should be aware of an individual that takes place in the court aspects of it is when a person is adjudicated or if they're found guilty by a judge or a jury, is that we conduct what we call a PSI, and that's called a pre-sentence investigation. And the purpose of that is to take those individuals and see what kind of person that they are generally. sometimes there are people who make a single poor choice, though it might be pretty bad, but it's still not describe who that individual has been for most of their life. And so that's taken into consideration. So in sentencing of individuals, there's some what we call aggravated and mitigating circumstances. Aggregated circumstances are first involve the seriousness of the offense or the kind of offense, but it also involves the number of times an individual may have committed crimes, and taking into consideration uh, why that person committed the offense, and mitigation, such as a drug problem or a poverty issue, those kind of things. Again, I've said this before, that individuals who commit crimes where drugs are involved do not commit crimes because they want to commit crimes. They are not in control of their lives, and that this element in them is controlling them, and they become a prisoner to that, and their actions come about because that particular drug or whatever causes them to say, it doesn't matter if I snatch a purse. It doesn't matter if I break into somebody's house. It doesn't matter if I break into somebody's car, and those kind of things. And it takes their normal ability, their mental aspects or cognitive aspects, and cripple them. Now, people say, well, that's no excuse. Well, guess what? I got news for you. I'm not telling you, asking you to sympathize with it. I'm telling you that's the realities of it. And so we start to look at some of the things that you deal with, and how individuals are treated in groups, how behavior and social therapy, some of the things I've talked about already. Education. I'm a big fan of educating individuals. I was involved in a program when I was a lawyer, and even after I retired, that actually originated by a judge in a criminal court building, uh, the main criminal court building in Cook County, in room 702. And it was a judge by the name of R. Eugene Pincham. And Judge R. Eugene Pincham and his probation officer, which, by the way, you already know that if you're going to be a probation officer or a parole officer, you can't be either of those two without a bachelor's degree. You do know that, right? Everybody know that? Well, yes, you should know that. And those are the very educated individuals. Those are the ones who become the clinicians or for individuals. So anyway, what I'm about to say is that Judge Pincham and his probation officer, a guy in the name of Harold Bailey, who's a good friend of mine, organized a program called Probation Challenge. And uh, individuals who came before Judge Pincham who were um, guilty of committing non-violent offenses, and qualified for probation otherwise under the jurisdiction of the state laws in Illinois. That individual, it was determined, often did not have a high school diploma. And so the option was given to those individuals to um, participate in the GED program and offer GED, general education diploma opportunities, or go to jail. And many of them went through it successfully, and some even went on to college after that. And so so what happened is that it worked so well with Judge Pincham's courtroom that one of our good friends on the board, a senator, uh, Brookins, Howard Brookins was his name, took that theory and introduced into Illinois State Senate the probation um, Act. And so the organization that I'm talking about um, became state law, and it opened up the opportunities for other judges to do that. And so the thing is, and I say it all the time, statistically, first of all, it's cheaper to educate than to incarcerate. It is way cheaper to educate than to incarcerate. And um, so as a result, to provide an education for individuals is a form of strong rehabilitation. Now, remember, once again, you can educate, but if a person has a drug problem, you can educate them all day long, but they still got to address that illness. So that's the point in a nutshell. Vocational programs. There are individuals now who are in facilities who are, yeah, 46,000 a year. Um, do you know that you could go to a junior college for maybe even half of that or a quarter of that and get an education? But here's my point in a nutshell is that uh, more and more institutions now are offering vocational programs. I know some people who actually have become beauticians and barbers while incarcerated in jail as well as prison, and have come out and they go to school and they learn how to cut hair and deal with personal hygiene, and that gives them an opportunity to make an honest living. Working on cars, working on computers. I mean, somebody said, well, why should we be doing this to those people who did something bad? Why should you get a free education for committing crime? I said, do you hear what you just said? I think we should get a free education, period. And that schools, you know, that's why we have grants. That's why you have scholarships. Well, individuals who have made mistakes, again, getting back to it, provide an ability for them to be able to feed themselves, to be able to provide a place to live and to achieve success in life. You show me somebody who hasn't made a mistake. You know what the definition of a criminal is? Anybody know? You must be reading my book. I haven't even finished writing it yet. That is one of the main statements that I have written. Someone that got caught. You are not a criminal until you are caught, and of course adjudicated to be that. But that's how you become a criminal. And so the point of the matter is that there are people who quote commit the same acts that these individuals got caught uh, committed, but they weren't as smart. Now, I heard a person say a very bad statement recently. They said, well, if you're going to educate individuals who have a propensity to commit crime, then they're going to become sophisticated and commit crime. I looked at that individual in the face and I says, did you hear what you said? So I guess, in other words, you get a Harvard a business degree, and then you go out and you participate in one of those big schemes like Enron and commit crimes using your business degree, or quote white collar crimes where you're not physically hurting people, but you're taking their livelihood and their money and stuff like that. You're still a criminal. Okay. Well, anyway, so dealing with education and vocation. Then the substance abuse aspects. Of course, I've already spoken about that. Sex offender programs go without saying. Uh, it is a sickness to be committing sex crimes, particularly if you're a pedophile. However, what happens is you have to register after you commit those offenses. Did you not know that you have to register in some jurisdictions if you, as a sex offender, if you urinate publicly? Did you know that? Yeah, you do. And so some of these individuals, but that's a small number. But I'm just saying to you that sometimes we have to get to the root. And by the way, what has happened to most sex offenders before they became labeled as a sex offender? What were they before that? Anybody know? Yep. Or victims of sexual assault. That's exactly what I was saying. And so it created an illness within those individuals that need to be addressed. And so anyway, the core thing is to get to the heart of the problem. And then we deal with religious programs where it's important for people to get an understanding about a relationship with God or Allah, or Buddha, or whatever you want to call it. I don't care what you call it, but the point of the matter is someone or some way to rechannel your activities. Yep. So anyway, we're talking about education, dealing with family, substance abuse, and so we're moving on down here. We're past this. Uh, all right. So now let's conclude by talking about uh, what is determinate and indeterminate sentencing. Now, I know for a fact that prior to 1977, actually it was 78, but 77, 78, Illinois was a indeterminate sentencing state. And with indeterminate sentencing, um, there was a tendency to give people um, less time serving in jail or in prison or in correctional facilities. And so indeterminate sentencing, it says, takes rehabilitation into consideration. They both do, but this one part of it, uh, it's hard to determine uh, uh, when a person is going to be released because it depends upon the authority of a certain jurisdiction. Now, these are just some of the features that you might run across. But one of the key things that I want to say about indeterminate sentencing is that the judge um, or the jury, but particularly the judge, has a whole lot more leeway, and that the law itself is written in a very flexible way. Because at one time, did you not know that life sentence didn't mean natural life? It now means, in many jurisdictions and in most jurisdictions, natural life. And so, dealing with indeterminate sentencing, there's a lot of latitude, and we're going to get into that specific in a minute. But determinate sentencing, uh, our individuals are given straight sentencing, um, deals with retribution, such as giving back, paying something back, paying an amount back to a person for committing a crime against them. And then the one of the key factors is bullet point number 3, and that is that the legislature determines the specific period of time that a person is incarcerated. And so because of that, then it's easier to determine um, how long someone's going to be in. And it says states can more easily calculate bed space because they know when a person is going to be released, unless while the person is incarcerated, they catch a case. And you know what I mean by that. They do something to make themselves stay longer, um, committed a crime while serving the time. States monitor the crime trends and establish changes based upon the length of sentences and needed bed space. So offenders are automatically released on certain dates, regardless of risk or rehabilitative attempts. So in other words, when it says you're going to serve a certain amount based upon the crime, you're going to be released unless you do some other crime while you're serving that. So it's like it's determined more. Indeterminate, it's hard because you don't know when a person is going to be released. Okay. Now, I don't want anybody to use these things in their PowerPoints or in their flyer, because the reason is because these are just some ideas. However, there are other ideas which you'll find when you conduct your research and actually do your reading. This is just some of it. So now I'm going to look at what we could do here in terms of what might fit under each of these. And let's do a little drag involved here. And let's see how it works out. So release decision based on determination that an individual has been rehabilitated. Which one is it? Determinate or indeterminate sentencing? Release based upon determination that an individual has been rehabilitated. Which one do you think? Determinate or indeterminate sentencing? Which one? Type in the chat box. Which one? No guesses? Nope. You see already, it's not. It's indeterminate. But if you try to put it over here, it's going to bounce back. So it goes with indeterminate. That's what I just said a few minutes ago. Issues with disparity are often prevalent. Which one? Goes over there too. A fixed sentence utilizing sentencing guidelines. Come on. Which one? Yeah, okay. That one. Yeah, that's it. Disparities based on gender, race, in which the sentences are eliminated. It's okay. This okay, you say determinate. Okay. Offender is automatically released once that sentence is served. Okay, good. A range of time that includes a minimum and a maximum. Okay, there we go. And so that's pretty much how it works. You'll find though that varies, like it says, from state to state. We have, and so see, I know about our state because when I was in law school, my senior research project was on what we call House Bill 1500. Those of you who are in Illinois will see that House Bill 1500. And that was the first major change to the Illinois Criminal Code since 1961. That was in 77. And House Bill 1500. And I worked with the committees that uh, came up with things like extended terms, habitual offender act, or dealing with Class X felonies, certain crimes that automatically had though they had a range of 6 to 30, but by the time you got into serving those times, you also had good behavior taken away, and there was no early release given either. So all of those things came about uh, during that period. And in the last class that we had when we were in 11 weeks, I used to give a whole lecture on determinate and indeterminate sentencing. So we don't do that anymore. And so now I'm going to just for a minute um, go to vocabulary review. Let you do a few of these because remember what I said about the quiz before. Some of these are going to pop up. Okay, so match these with their description. Which one is retribution? Which one goes retribution? The eye for an eye, individualized punishment, presumes the public will be deterred from criminal activity because the hardened, um, because the punishment is handed down. Individualized. It is the punishment the convicted individual receives to deter them from continued activity. And then this one. Let's see how well you were. Yep. And so you go ahead and then you continue and you do the next. And I'm not going to do them with you. So you keep going all the way through. And that helps you to understand the vocabulary of what you're going to run across better when you do uh, your studies. All right. Any questions about this week? Any questions? Any ideas about what I might consider to be the key phrase for this week? Oh, you're welcome. Anybody have any ideas about what I might consider to be the key phrase? Look in the chat box. No clues? Um, well, no, I'm not going to use that. That's too long. Any other guesses? Just two words. Nope. Nope. Starts with an R. First word starts with an R. That's close, but that's not it. Two words. One starts with an R and the other one starts with a J. Now I just gave it to you. Restorative justice. That's what I want. Give me restorative justice. And yep. And that's what I want you to give me, because that's the essence pretty much of the philosophies that are taking place in these correction facilities. So for the final time, and usually I don't say it more than one, but I'll do it today, restorative justice, and you have your points. So with that, I'm going to say good night to you guys. I made it through. This is, again, keep me in your prayers. And thank you. I appreciate that, Bryce. And I will um, see you guys next week. I am going to be working on getting your grades completed by Friday, but it might be this weekend that I have them completed, so you'll know why. Because this is pretty tough for me. But anyway, you know, it'll you'll get them by no later than Sunday. That's for sure. So, all right. Any questions? Don't hesitate, even though I'm dealing with what I'm doing. Please don't hesitate to reach out to me for any questions or concerns you have with your assignments, because one of the things that you guys should realize and know is that when I do what I'm doing with my students, it takes my mind off of some of my personal stuff. So, um, but so good night, guys, and uh, again, thank you, and stay safe out there. Um, I don't care what they say about opening up some of these states. I'm not hearing it. I'm not hearing. Oh, thank you. I'll tell you a story about something like that later on when what I did with one of my students about their graduation, um, and it was in Florida. It was just last year, but I'll tell you about that next time. Remind me, and I'll mention that to you. Okay. But anyway, what I was saying is, I don't care. They open up like down there in Florida. Those of you who are down in Florida, your governor has lost his mind. I think it's the guy. Yeah, he's lost his mind. Opening up the beaches. Yeah, 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 yeah. And you know, I don't care. I'm 69. My birthday is May 3rd, and I will not um, miss next year, especially because of that. So just stay safe, guys, and be wise as well. So good night, guys. I know you guys that are in a position like Bryce, you have to go. Your first responders, your medical people. I have two. I have a niece and I have a cousin who are CPD sergeants, and they have to go. So I have fire department family members and so forth, EMTs, so forth. So good night. Happy birthday. Happy birthday.